Welcome in. Klay Thompson, no longer a Golden State Warrior. He is planning to sign a 3-year, $50 million contract with the Dallas Mavericks. That's over $16 million a year, and the Klay's 13-year run with the Golden State Warriors is over. Welcome into Willard and Dibs here on 95.7 The Game. As you heard, Mark Willard not in today. It's Dan Dibley, Jason Dumas, and Mark Grandy with you until 6 o'clock here on 95.7 The Game. Free agency is not even 24 hours old, guys. But a franchise pillar is no longer with the Golden State Warriors. Klay Thompson, a Dallas Maverick. The complete details of a 3-team trade between the Hornets, the Mavericks, and the Warriors still to be completed. We don't know just yet who exactly the Warriors will be getting back, as it is officially a sign-in trade for Klay Thompson to the Dallas Mavericks. I would imagine it's not going to be anything special, and it might be nothing. Maybe it's just a second-round pick, or it's a trade exception. But the big news, guys, is Klay Thompson, 13 years with the Golden State Warriors. No more. He's a Dallas Maverick.
Yeah, not shocking, but still emotional when you think about what it's meant and, where I was 13 years ago when he started as a Warrior and, all the rest of that historical part of it. And I guess, and I kind of said this, Jason, earlier in the week with Mark Willard last week or whatever, I'm really going to have that visceral emotional reaction when I see him come out in a Maverick jersey and, Klay does his kind of strut. It's a little bit of a thing that he does, the way he walks and the way he shoots his free throw with like the crossover dribble and he goes shoulder over, shoulder over. When I see all that happen in a Mavericks jersey, that's when it's going to hit me. But for today, it feels more like just business,
Yeah, with me, I feel like I have a unique perspective because I'm obviously not as emotionally connected to Klay Thompson and the Warriors as, most of our audience is, because I've only been here for 6 years. So I've been covering him for a fairly decent time, 6 years, but it's not something where I am just like so emotionally drawn in. I just saw a guy, unfortunately, my first year was the year he got hurt. He tears that knee up. He comes back like a Warrior, knocks down those 2 free throws. Him coming back.
He goes back on defense, too.
Yeah. Him coming back, I think that is the last time we saw Klay Thompson, who we all remember, Klay Thompson, if that makes sense. Because from that moment, obviously, he gets diagnosed with the torn ACL. His next season's over. Ruptures that Achilles, his next season's over. Then he comes back, and he's not that two-way player he ever was, and that affected him mentally. Of course, it affected his play on the court. You have this young, up-and-coming, loud, boisterous kid in Jordan Poole who very much so threatened Klay figuratively, obviously, threatened Klay in the pecking order. And it's just never been the same. And we've seen the flashes, and he's had some great plays, but then we've also seen the low points. His last game of the season this past year, last game of the season last year against the Lakers. Those have been loud moments too. So I've been able to look at it from the standpoint of, look, from a basketball point of view, he just has not been consistent enough for him to be your second or third best player. And really, with the makeup of the roster the last couple of years, he's kind of is like you're like third best player one night. Maybe he gets hot, second best another night, but he's not consistent enough for that to be a winning formula. So from a basketball point of view, I see why the Warriors had other priorities, but obviously we're all human and we all have feelings. Some bigger and more intense than others. And I think Klay naturally is a guy who is going to be in his feels more than other people. And this was just a result of that. This was a 3-year in the making thing. And, it's sad from the standpoint of, you don't want things to end this way, but you just look at the history of sports. Klay is not the first. He won't be the last to have a long tenure with an organization. In the last couple years, a little awkward. That's probably a good word for it. A little awkward because your skills eroded and you just didn't handle it the right way. I'm not absolving the organization for everything. Maybe messaging could have been a little better. But here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And I think you're right. You can maybe understand it from a basketball perspective, potentially from a business perspective. How much do you think Klay is worth? Is he a good enough basketball player to be your number 2 option behind Steph Curry? I think last year probably proved that no, but that doesn't take away just how emotional of a day this is. And maybe it's a little bit different for you, as you talked about, not native to this area.
Right.
Diggs and I, you and I both grew up watching the Golden State Warriors, and you know the history a little bit more of all the bad years, all the down years. I don't remember watching a Warriors basketball team that had a chance to do anything until I was like 10 years old. That was when We Believe happened, right around then. Like, I grew up loving Warriors basketball and loving basketball, but not having a good basketball team. And the fact that this team ultimately not just won 1 championship, but won 4 championships, and this guy was a big part of it, and now he's no longer Golden State Warrior, it's emotional. And Warrior fans, we're here for you all day long on 95.7 The Game. 888-957-9570. How are you feeling now that Klay is no longer a Warrior? How will you remember him? What's your favorite Klay moment? We could go on for hours about Klay moments. There's so many of them. Are you sad that he's gone? Can you understand it from a basketball perspective? Was it just time simply for the split to happen? As Jason is talking about, there's clearly some emotions from Klay, but maybe there's some miscalculations from the Warriors. Maybe they weren't aware of how he was going to react emotionally. The report was that they were hoping if they swung and missed on Paul George, they would then go back to Klay, and then thinking that he would find a depressed market, he'd be willing to sign with you. Well, he found the depressed market, but you upset him enough they didn't want to come back here anyway. So how you feeling, Warriors fans? 888-957-9570. You can call and join the conversation. You can also text us at that number. It's the Xfinity mobile text line. But guys, for me, my emotion today, and there's so many thoughts about what's to come next, and we'll get to all of that. I'm just a sad Warrior fan today because one of the franchise pillars is no longer with the franchise. It's sad,
and you talk about the big 3, and it's Steph, Klay, and Dre. It's always been kind of a hashtag or a catchphrase because the 3 of them have won 4 titles together, and you had KD, you had Iguodala, you've had Kevon, you've had other pieces that have been here for the majority of it, but the whole idea of Steph, Klay, and Dre is no longer a thing. And now it's just Steph and Dre. And so you look at the future of the team, and we can get into all the basketball parts of it as we get further down the road. But right now, just the emotion of Steph, Klay, and Dre, as we've all said for 11 years or more, 13 years, that is no longer a way we can describe the Warriors. The big 3 is no more, and Steph, Klay, and Dre is no more. And so when you think about that, it kind of reminds me of just like the finality, not only of sports, as Jason was saying, because it always ends a certain way, but in life in general, you get to a certain point where this happens or that happens, and you're coming off a ruptured Achilles, and there are things now in your body that will never be the same again. And I hate to bring it back to your lower extremities, but you're at that point now, and you're probably early to mid 30s, and it's like, dude, you get to that spot where it's like, that's a wrap. And so now as Warrior fans, Klay is gone, and there will never be a Steph, Klay, and Dre again. So you could think about like what's to come, but you could take a moment to think about what's already happened. And it's definitely sad when you look at that.
Dibs just told me I'll never be the same again.
No, it's
he's looking at me. He's like, yeah, and it's over.
No, I'm sorry,
at least you're not a professional athlete.
Yeah.
No, I can still earn a living.
Yeah,
I can still earn a living. No, I know exactly what you meant. Like Klay got probably the 2 worst injuries you can have as a basketball player in back-to-back years on the other side of 30. Like, that is just... Right. It's amazing he's been able to come back and do what he's done.
It's difficult to fathom what he went through in those 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Just being away. And like I said, Klay is a guy who wears his emotions on his sleeve as it is. So, like, you take away everything and you just, like, person to person, Klay is probably considered more emotional than the average person. Anyway, just naturally. Then you put all it into context that this is his livelihood. It's probably all he has done really for the past 13 years. I mean, obviously he has other interests, but you get what I mean. Like, this is his life. Basketball is gone for 2 years. You got to find other ways to pass time. You got to be away from the camaraderie of a locker room, which is something that's probably comforting to you. And then once you come back, you have to try to tell yourself, I'm going to get back to the level I was playing in, because we know he cares so much about what people think of him and his legacy. What did he say about Charles Barkley earlier this year? It hurt my heart to hear Charles Barkley say that about me and question who he is as a player now. Like, that impacts him. So when you consider all of that, and then, like I said, and then like some of the external factors that are out of his control, you see Jordan Poole just flourishing. Like, now Klay's never going to come out and pull a Carson Wentz and say, like, I don't feel comfortable with this team playing so well without me. Like, I mean, that's what Carson Wentz said about Nick Foles going through that playoff run, why he was just basically shunned from Philly after that. Klay's not going to do that, but he is human. You're in the midst of your rehab. You're at the tail end of it, obviously, at this point. And you see a team was like 15-5 or 18-2.
Yeah, something like
18-2.
18-2.
Yep.
You see Jordan Poole like looking like he might be the most improved player in the league and like a borderline all-star, especially during that 20-game stretch to start the year.
And having so much fun while doing it.
Everyone, pool party, signs everywhere in your starting slot. Now, like, it's almost natural for you to feel a certain type of way. And then when you come back, Klay's not the type to be like, you know what? We're 18-2. We're playing really good basketball. Let's slow roll this. I'll come off the bench. No, Klay came back and said, I'm starting. That is my spot. Yeah. Don't you even dare form your lips to say anything else. Remember what
he said when KD came? He's like, oh, you're not taking any of my shots.
I ain't sacrificing
Exactly.
Thank
you. He was the same way, because I can tell you from the Warriors side, they didn't come out and say, hey, Klay, we want Jordan Poole to start. He's going to start. But the idea was given to him, and it was tossed back in their face and say, don't say that again. I don't even want to hear it.
Say less.
So that was the start of just uncomfortable moments with Klay Thompson. And I think uncomfortable is the perfect word, because it didn't create some strife in the locker room and people were pissed off at him. But, it's like, probably if Steve Kerr probably preferred to keep Jordan Poole in the starting lineup. And it would have made total sense. But not going to push. I know when and when not. I mean, most recently this year, that was finally when he was like, dude, I don't care. I'm coming off the bench.
Right.
But that ball got in motion when he first came back. So he comes back. They get through it. They have their ebbs and flows of the season, and it is fine. It's regular. They end up winning a championship. So when you win, a lot of the other stuff is kind of pushed under the rug. So there was some issues like shot hunting.
But now they're 2 years removed from winning,
right?
And you can't suppress it anymore.
Right. And remember, there's another person in the fold. Jordan Poole was also like, what's going on here? He's not playing better than me. We all have eyes. Like, why can't I get mine? So you have that to deal with. And it ultimately, that wore thin on people too. So you got these two guys, and then, I mean, Draymond takes it upon himself, I guess, to kind of shut that down.
Exactly.
Not in the way we wanted.
Klay's side, if it was about,
100%.
And you remember when they came back from the Asia trip and Klay's like, oh, this guy wanted to come at me in the 3-point shooting contest. And, Klay actually spoke out about Jordan.
Yeah, this young guy.
Exactly, starting to rise up a little bit.
Once you start looking back, you start to see the signs.
Yep.
When it happens in real time, it's not something that you're going to just like make a huge note of or make a crazy deal. But that's kind of my point. The signs, there's been writing on the wall for a while.
Yeah.
Klay was not comfortable with Jordan Poole's rise in status in the organization. He was not.
And then even when Jordan left, though, when he got traded, it was Klay's time to kind of shine, and then Klay didn't shine. And then I wonder how much the fan backlash, because I know Klay hears all of it, and we've gotten a lot of texts and calls and 888-957-9570, your thoughts and memories of Klay, but on the text line and Twitter, and everybody's like, oh, Klay Thompson and stop shooting and all the rest of it. And I wonder how much that leads to Klay feeling like, man, you don't love me like you love Draymond, who punched a teammate, and certainly not Steph, who is everybody's golden child.
Yeah. So from the 661 on the Xfinity Mobile text line, at least Klay did right by Dub Nation by turning down more money from the hated Lakers to sign in Dallas. So thank you one final time.
Yeah.
One final time.
That would have been bad if he ended up.
And if the sign and trade ends up actually happening, and Lucas, our producer, director of sports, actually sharing something on our thread that it's not completely done. The Warriors are still waiting for compensation, but if Klay did make this a sign and trade, at least that's one last kind of thank you.
Yeah, we'll see what they get back.
But he didn't have to, you know? Yeah. And we all remember the KD sign and trade, which he didn't have to do that, and which eventually led to Wiggins and Kuminga. So if Klay did that, then at least that's one last kind of thank you situation.
I got to take a quick break. Josh and Scott, I see you on hold. We're coming to you on the other side. Klay Thompson is no longer a Golden State Warrior. How does that make you feel? What's your favorite Klay memory? Was it just simply time for these two guys to split, Klay and the Warriors? And how did we get here? We'll break it all down coming up on the other side. And remember, our Warriors offseason summit is coming up a week from today on the rooftop terrace of Fremont Bank's state-of-the-art new headquarters. It starts at 2 with Willard and Dibbs live, and then the rest of the crew joins at 4 until 6. Go to 957thegame.com to reserve your free spot today. More coming up on the other side. It's Willard and Dibbs here on 95.7 The Game.